And I think people are trying to supplement for the same things, right? Like everyone cares about the health and longevity of their animals. So I think topics like aging across all three of these species become super relevant. The probiotics, the prebiotics, all the digestive health supplements, super relevant in all three animals. Joint health, right? And I think that's why a lot of these companies dabble in all three, right? If you have a company providing dog and cat supplements, they're often somehow involved in horse and vice versa too, because it is a lot of the same nutraceuticals in most cases.
Hello and welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, brought to you by Wyzen Ethics, where we will take a deep dive into the science, trends, and innovations shaping the way that we feed our pets. Whether you're a pet owner, an industry professional, or simply interested in learning more about what goes into your pet's diet, this space is for you. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Shoveler. I'm a professor of companion animal nutrition at the University of Guelph with a background in comparative animal nutrition and a passion for understanding how evidence-based approaches can improve the health and well-being of our pets. On today's podcast, we have Dr. Alex Rankovic, who is a research associate in companion animal and equine nutrition at the University of Guelph. You might have seen the commonality here, but Alex is actually a research associate in my laboratory, although honestly, she probably contributes to a litany of other projects on campus and off campus in terms of some of our research. Alex earned her MSc and PhD in companion animal nutrition from Guelph, and today she shares her expertise as one of the hosts of the Pet Food Science Podcast, particularly focused on equine nutrition. Today, we're going to talk about why adding equine nutrition to the Pet Food Science Podcast provides a new sandbox for us to learn in and provides new avenues of thought for us to consider. With that, welcome, Alex. I'm so excited to talk to you and to welcome you in.
Well, thanks for having me, Kate. It's fun to be on this side of the podcast instead of being the one asking the questions. Though I'll probably have some questions for you too, because you also dabble in the equine nutrition space. So I think we'll have a lot to chat about.
I think maybe for the listeners, I think it's always really interesting to think about who ends up landing in equine nutrition. And I can tell everybody why I teach equine and I dabble in equine nutrition myself. And largely, I think that if you get an advanced degree, but you're a horse rider,
absolutely,
you end up doing equine in some capacity because you have to have some kind of affinity. Is that how you landed here?
Yeah, I see it. I mean, when I think about even my trajectory getting into research, a lot of it was I was a student. I needed a part-time job to pay for the horse. I ended up working at a pet store and just got really interested in pet nutrition and what people were asking and feeding their pets. So I don't know, in a way, had I not had the horse, I don't know that I would have landed where I am today. And then, yeah, you're absolutely right. When people know you have a horse and some interest in horse nutrition and in horse research, I got involved in all kinds of different projects and industry opportunities and teaching opportunities throughout grad school related to horses and equine nutrition, just because I was passionate about horses. So,
well, and they continue to abound, the opportunities in horse, because there's really not a lot of formal training programs in horse nutrition, horse physiology. You know, there's obviously universities situated globally that focus on horse, but it's a small focus in contrast to pet, and then both equine and pet are small in contrast to animal ag. And dare I say that the exotic pets that are sold in the pet store that we should probably think about as well, there's even less opportunities for formal training in there. So you have to almost have a personal curiosity to get involved in these and to get an opportunity to get into one of the few labs that does research in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. We always talk about it in the pet space that the funding opportunities for our research are limited as compared to livestock because we're not contributing, I guess, to the public health sector, public nutrition, feed systems the way the livestock animals do. But then you look at horse, and horse is sort of in that gray space between being pet and livestock, and then things become even more limited, and I think industry funding and research opportunities become even less in the horse space as compared to the dog and cat space. And then even less so, to your point, when you start to think about bunnies and other exotic animals. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think what Alex was trying to skirt around there is because we don't eat pets.
Yeah, thank you for saying it. I didn't want to put it quite like that, but yeah.
Well, it is the biggest thing, but I would actually argue that's really siloed, right? There should be funding for these two animals and maximizing their health, well-being, and welfare, because we spend so much time with them and they're becoming bigger parts of our families.
Absolutely.
Shall we say. So I would argue that there is a need for public engagement and funding and support of our research. And we do need research on these animals. Horses, let's talk a little bit about maybe what we can learn from horses, and we can apply it elsewhere. So we're constantly thinking about maybe applying it to dog and cat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the things that I think about, and let's see which ones you think. I think our nutritional management of horses is better developed than our nutritional management of dogs and cats.
I agree. Absolutely.
In dogs and cats, we could learn about that. So what do you think we can learn from horses that we can apply to dog and cat?
Well, I'll kind of follow up on what you said. I think when it comes to dog and cat, we focus very much on what we're feeding them. But when we think about horses, I think pet owners in particular are also, or horse owners, are very in tune to, it's not just what we feed them, but how we feed them. And, with the horse, it is so related to their gastrointestinal tract, and which then impacts performance, which is often what people are looking at when they're thinking about horse health and behavior. But, we know that we have to provide our horses with constant access to forage. We think about sort of that social aspect in that interaction that they need as well when it comes to being outside and grazing. And you've done some work with cats looking at, feeding frequency and even more recently different formats of food and how that affects behavior and energy. But beyond that, I don't think we really consider with dog and cat, at least I don't see it as much, how we feed them, when we feed them, how often we feed them, et cetera, like we do with our horses. So I think that's one thing for sure. And then I think the other thing is performance, right? And I think when it comes to, you do a lot of work with sled dogs and so does the lab. I think to horses, right? When we're thinking about possibilities or hypotheses, to me, that's the most direct comparison that I can make in a lot of these cases, because what other animal do we really have where we're looking at performance as an outcome the way that we do with horses? So I'd say those are my two that I think about right away. Did you have any others that you kind of consider right from the start?
Yeah, I would say though, I really like your point about working animals as well. And I think that there's even less money in dog and cat when we think about working.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah.
There are probably people snickering right now about what cats can do to work, but we're getting more and more information on the fact that we can train them quite well. So if we can train them, then they can perform work. I don't know what that capacity looks like, other than cuddles. That's what.
Well, you have your barn cats, right? They have a job in a sense. Like they're out there working for their food in a lot of cases. They're providing a service. They're absolutely working animals in a way.
Yeah, barn cats are fascinating, and you might have just landed yourself in writing a grant trying to figure out how barn cats split their time budgets in a day. I think we should do that for an undergrad. It would be a lot of fun. I think probably where, if we wanted to add another thing that's super common, but I would say that this is common not with ag animal, but with humans, is I think that we, in all dog and horse, maybe a little less in cat, although I think cat is relevant as well, the supplement market.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think people are trying to supplement for the same things, right? Like everyone cares about the health and longevity of their animals. So I think topics like aging across all three of these species become super relevant. The probiotics, the prebiotics, all the digestive health supplements, super relevant in all three animals. Joint health, right? And I think that's why a lot of these companies dabble in all three, right? If you have a company providing dog and cat supplements, they're often somehow involved in horse and vice versa too, because it is a lot of the same nutraceuticals in most cases.
Yeah, no, I agree too. And not just nutraceuticals, but also we have to think too about vitamins and minerals. I think we have a lot less information on, for example, forms of vitamins and minerals and how dogs, cats, and horses process those differently. So we also need some fundamental species specifics. So I don't want any of the listeners to think that we're saying that these things are the same between dogs and cats and horses. That most certainly not. I mean, those are three very, very different mammalian species, right? But you can look at how you approach the problem in one animal and you can apply. And usually when you find differences among the species, it really starts to kind of point back to what and how they should be fed. So you take similar approaches, but you learn very, very different things from these three species that help to inform all your practices. So I just want to make sure that the listeners know that we think these are different, but we think that talking about one might stimulate you to think about whether you can apply it or would you apply it similarly in another species.
I think it just kind of contributes to that comparative perspective of these universal principles that we consider with all species, right? So I think it kind of helps to allow us to more broadly think about them.
I think maybe one more thing that I would add that is probably even more important for us to consider than maybe even the ag industry is that we really have to think about the sustainability of our diets for these three animals. Especially if feed and foodstuffs become more constricted in the future for a multitude of different reasons. But how will we shift our feed and food ingredients and how we, obviously we're going to have to maximize humans first. Yeah. Means that the next one up is agricultural animals. And I think we have to become more precise with our nutrition for these three species because they're lower on the food selection totem pole if we really have to start to pick and choose. So I really think that all the pillars of sustainability are probably very essential for everyone to be thinking of and constantly having that in their back of their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that real world application, right? That comes back to all these species. We can figure out what kind of nutrients they need, but then we need to consider how to best provide them while considering humans and the health of our planet too, right? So yeah, absolutely agree with you.
So I thought it'd be a good thing to give the podcast folks a run for their money, throw out what are the next three species that we should consider focusing on at the Pet Food Science Podcast.
I think for me, bunnies are right up there. I always tell like my friends who have children who are really into horses, or I don't know, students who are like, oh, love horses, but so expensive, which they are, absolutely. Get a bunny. It's like having a tiny horse in your house almost. A lot more manageable, a lot less expensive. And when you look at the published research looking at bunnies in terms of companion animals, which is, I think, in my opinion, very different than bunnies that are being raised for meat. Because for my bunny here, who's lying on the floor beside me, I'm considering longevity. I'm considering him as he ages, his digestive health, his joint health. And none of those have been considered for rabbits because historically we've bred them for meat, right? And they're not going to live to be up till 10, 12, however long. So I think rabbits is a big one. And it's always something I'm really fascinated with whenever I think about horses or any new research coming out in horses. How can I apply that to him? And how can we apply that to bunnies in general? Because there are countries where bunnies are the third most popular pet. Like the UK, I think the UK is up there. I think over there right after dog and cat. And so I think we need to have those conversations too, about how we feed these different exotic species like them. So that's my top one. And then I don't know, I'm not really a reptile girl. I need something fluffy with lots of hair.
I would, but I think reptiles are up there. But I think that you kind of have more textbook level knowledge with them. I think it would be very interesting to look at reptiles.
I think about birds sometimes, right? Because they live to be so old. Like, how much research do we have considering like geriatric birds, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It would be interesting to talk to poultry nutritionists about whether they think that the whether those are layers or broilers could remotely be used as a model for all these other birds. And then to talk to people who look at wild birds and things like energy expenditure and things like that. I know there's people around the world that do that.
But I think to your point too, that's one of the good things about having a podcast like this, where we are talking about different species. And maybe I have a guest on the horse side who's talking about vitamin E in horses, and you have one on the dog or cat side, right? Like, I think it's important to bridge those gaps and allow people to make those connections, and maybe considering working together and collaborating on some of these different topics. Like, I think we can go outside of our species when we're doing research and learn from each other.
I completely agree. I think maybe one thing that I would add in here is there's a lot of zoo animals that I think that would provide a nice bridge between captive or domesticated animals within the same zoological order. So, for example, thinking about all the different types of cats and commonalities with the domestic cat and differences. On dog, the canid species also very interesting and diverse. It would be really interesting to get others in who maybe do. I don't know. I don't know enough about dingoes, so I think I'm just going to throw the dingo out there. Or even feral. All these feral.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not pets, but they're feral colonies and whatnot. I think we can learn a lot from them too. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where the barn cat becomes interesting, right? Because you're almost like, do they sort of think they're like in a little bit of a different gray zone than our domestic cats that are just sitting at home. So yeah, I do wonder about them.
Yeah, you have access to a few of them.
I think anyone who has a horse kind of does, right? They just kind of come with the territory.
Yeah, where there's grain, there's mice, and where there's the importance to have cats. So,
yeah, I mean, we even have a peacock at my barn. I don't know what the opportunities are there, but
a peacock?
Yeah.
Interesting. Not interested in peacocks.
I don't know any peacock researchers.
I might also add a few of these kind of really rogue, weird pets that people can tend to have, like emus and llamas, and probably fall in these categories as well.
Yeah, I think, the llama one in particular, right? Most people that have llamas they're keeping them as pets, right? So you're not, when you consider your livestock, like, do they have longer lifespans than your average cow does, as an example? And I have no idea what the lifespan of a llama or an alpaca is, but they're also being treated as pets for the most part. So I think you're absolutely right.
It's time for our famous three. For more than 20 years, BioOrigin manufactures high-quality yeast-based ingredients through a sustainable biotechnological process, guaranteeing full traceability from the crop to the bowl. Through specialization in the fermentation process, BioOrigin brings the right solution for specific nutritional, palatability, and health appeals, such as gut health, immune system, skin health, weight control, and more. BioOrigin's products are natural origin, non-GMO, and certified sustainable by Bonsucro. BioOrigin is your partner for high-quality, yeast-based ingredients to add value to pet foods worldwide. Learn more at bioorigin.net.
Yeah. So we really have to kind of dimensionalize when we think about pets. We have to look at how these relationships are evolving, and they're evolving differently everywhere in the world. The opportunity to learn not just about their nutrition, but how to manage them in our houses, or for, in the case of the horse and llamas and emus, that we wouldn't be having them in the house, although maybe they'd like to be in the house, but in the barn. So I think that the opportunities are quite endless for us to continue to learn.
I think so. And I think it all, at the end of the day, it comes back to, at least in my opinion, like when I think about my pets and what they've brought into my life, like they have brought me so much joy through the bond that I have with them. And I think it doesn't matter what animal we're considering as a pet or a domestic species, it comes back to that. Like any pet that you have, you want to see them live a long, happy life, because it brings you joy. It adds something to your life. And so I think it's important to not just think about the pet, but also think about the person behind the pet and how does their health ultimately affect that person as well, right? I think that's, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what pet we're talking about, there's someone attached to them.
It's all in the attempt to support the human-animal bond and to maximize everyone's welfare, frankly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need more research support for that reason. Even though we're not eating them, they bring a different, really important sense of, love and well-being and that bond into our life. I think that's just as important.
Absolutely. Well, I think I am going to push to have a big cat expert on soon. That's my promise to the listeners today. And what are you interested in pursuing that's not yet on your slate?
I think there's a lot to be learned about just geriatric animals, especially with horses. So that's when I'd like to have someone come on just to talk about that more broadly. Amino acids and protein requirements in horses, I think, is a huge topic. I think for listeners who maybe they don't have horses, but you think about your gym bros, or you think about people going to the gym who feel like they need to pack on the protein. You also similarly have people who are maybe trotting their horse around once a week who think they need to pack on the protein for their horse, which is not the case. So I think trying to refine what those protein requirements are and how those change with exercise and how much they change, if they do change, I think needs to be discussed more. And I think needs to be discussed in a way that the average horse owner can find accessible. And you can kind of see my bunny in the background now. There he is.
I know. I was just gonna point that out, that he came into frame to make sure everybody knew that this was about
I think there's
him.
another pet on the other side of the door. That's why.
Oh, other side of the door is always super interesting. Well, I think with that, we're going to conclude today's podcast presented by Wisenetics. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to stay updated for future episodes. And remember, don't just think about the Pet Food Science podcast in terms of dogs and cats, but give out the equine portion of the Pet Food Science podcast a try too. You might get an idea that you want to cross-apply to your own brand and work that you do. So until next time, this is Kate Shoveler signing off for the Pet Food Science Podcast.